Well, to unravel this situation, we're delighted to welcome Mark McNamee. He's co-founder, Ukraine Business News Network. Welcome, Mr. McNamee.
Thanks for having me.
So what's Russia's game here? Does it want peace? Is this just a ploy? Is it holding out for something before it attends? What's going on?
Sure. So pretty concretely, Putin, the Kremlin, are not genuinely interested in peace, and particularly at this moment. They very confidently believe they are winning currently in the short term, and they believe that with enough pressure, with enough time, they will inevitably, in their eyes, win this war and end the war essentially on their terms with conditions that they're demanding. That may be, in their eyes, if that's in 3 months, fantastic. If that's in 3 years, 6 years, 15 years, any cost is worth bearing to win this war on their terms. So, no, we can say concretely, Putin, the Kremlin, Russia are not generally interested in peace. And we can see that. You mentioned that Putin has proposed some peace overtures, peace offers at various points, really since the beginning of the full-scale invasion over the last 2.5 years. But just looking at the latest iteration of this, he set out his terms in June, just prior to the Geneva summit, the peace summit, run by the Western world, and Zelensky offered his peace plan and some portions of it. Just before, the day before that summit began, Putin, of course, did not want to look as if he was the warmonger and the one who wanted war to go on endlessly. And so he wanted the world to see him as one interested in peace. Obviously, this is not genuine or real, but he proposed a supposed peace plan. But it wasn't a peace plan by any means. These were capitulation terms. These were surrender terms to Ukraine. Russia was effectively giving up nothing. There's no tit for tat. There's no negotiation. There's no diplomacy. Ukraine and the West had to effectively surrender everything to fulfill Putin's maximalist goals. And then that was sort of put under the title of a peace plan, a peace overture. But it's simply just not real. And so in the same way, we can see Zelensky now talking about a new peace summit. He, of course, doesn't want to be seen much more genuinely as someone who wants to continue an endless war. And so he likewise wants to sort of, in this information war, he wants to be seen as well, again, much more genuinely as one who is actually pursuing some sort of legitimate peace, some real peace on the ground at some point down the line.
Yeah, but the timing is interesting, isn't it, Mr. McNamee? I mean, doesn't it make President Zelensky look weak? Hurry up and let's find peace before Trump gets back into office, because, well, God knows what's going to happen after that. I mean, why should Putin be interested in attending peace talks? All Putin has to do is wait.
Right. In Putin's eyes, absolutely. I wouldn't say too strongly that the Kremlin, they definitely want Trump in office, and they think Trump could be beneficial for them, of course. But this is not to say that the Kremlin is 100% confident that once they get Trump in, he will simply do their work for them, and then they'll get to the conclusion that they want in this war. They're not that confident to believe in a Trump presidency in that way. As far as you mentioned, is this maybe a revelation of weakness on the side of Zelensky? I suppose it depends on what audience we're talking about here, right? So are we talking, if you look at the non-Western world, right, so the global South, a lot of them, I say incorrectly, of course, but a lot of the non-Western world perceive this as, this war was maybe pushed and started by, the Western world and NATO encroachment. And so Russia reacted, and now Ukraine keeps fighting and they won't stop fighting. This is entirely incorrect. However, perceptions matter, and a lot of the global South does perceive the conflict that way. So you have to consider maybe Zelensky is positioning himself towards the global South. And he even noted at the next summit he would prefer this. I believe he mentioned holding this in Saudi Arabia, right? The last summit being held in Switzerland, which has been historically the mediator for the various Western wars over the last several centuries. And so he actually said, let's hold the summit in the non-Western world, in Saudi Arabia. So you have to consider the audience that maybe Zelensky's trying to appeal to. In the Western world, you're correct. This may be seen as, on the one hand, a sign of potential weakness. But on the other hand, again, you have a lot of political factions and a lot of elements across Western society that, again, see this war in part pushed by the West and prolonged or maybe pushed by Ukraine. He might be speaking to some of them. You have to think with the rise of populism, as we've seen in elections here in Europe, and obviously with populist movement in the United States and Trump, that he might be talking to some of those audiences to prove to them that, no, in fact, I am 100% interested in peace. And so may, on the one hand, may come across as weakness to some parts of the population, but it may come across as a more realistic and humanitarian president to other parts of the population.
Understood. Okay, so they're both playing their games. Now, do you believe that China might exert some influence on Russia and say, well, look, come on, Putin, get round the table there and see if you can thrash something out?
Well, that's the hope from, again, both Ukraine and the West. And this is another audience, part of the non-Western world, part of the global South. This is part of the audience that Zelensky is speaking to. He's trying to show Ukraine, we're on the side of peace. We're trying to work towards this. China, are you trying to work towards peace? Are you trying, as a global player now? You can't really just sit on the fence and on the sidelines on such a massive historical event going on here in Eastern Europe with this war. Are you going to get involved? And by the way, China has been involved. I mean, they sent military to do military exercises in Belarus on the border of this war here in Eastern Europe. Obviously, and in the NATO summit, in the statement afterwards, they condemned China for being an enabler, a decisive enabler, I believe the words were used, towards Russia. So yes, I think we're starting to include in the conversation China's role. What are you doing? Are you helping Russia? Or are you not helping Russia? In what ways are you helping them? Are you trying to be a peacemaker or you're not trying to be a peacemaker? Very critically, the summit in Geneva last month did not include China. China did not. Xi Jinping wasn't there, right?
But he refused to come. He refused to attend.
And likely at Putin's behest, right? Putin assuredly would have encouraged him not to come. So that's quite telling. So it's not terribly surprising that undermined, right, somewhat of the credibility of what does this summit mean if Russia's not there and China's not there. So responding to that a month later, it's not terribly surprising that then Zelensky makes some overtures towards China, and NATO makes comments about China, trying to pressure them. If you're involved, you have to get involved and be on the right side of history here and try to work towards peace. So that's the hope. I tend to believe at this point, under current conditions where we are, as far as when and how would China get involved, China's happy to more or less sit on the fence for a while. I think they would get more decisively involved, and they'd have to make a decision, one way or the other. If, let's say, next year we start to see strategically the war moving in Ukraine's direction more, and you're seeing more pressure on Russia and more pressure on the Kremlin, and you start to get into concerns of Russia's ability to conduct the war, continue the war, and Russia may be losing, then China might be put in a position where they have to make a decision. Are they going to support Russia much more strongly and prolong this war and help Russia win in some terms, or are they going to become a peacemaker, which is what they have been publicly presenting themselves as, is the global peacemaker. They're not the United States of the old international order of the last 35 years and the wars that the West has conducted, but they're the peacemaker. Well, let's see if they actually do play that role when they come to the table and they have responsibility.
Right. Well, some may say, Mr. McNamee, that actually China's quite clearly talking out of both sides of its mouth, because on the one hand they say they want to present themselves as peacemaker. On the other hand, they send 60 Chinese troops to Belarus. They give dual-use equipment to Russia. They're funding Russia's economy by buying lots and lots of oil. And of course they're taking this opportunity to watch the West's reaction, because there will be, it might give some indications of how the West might react in the Asia-Pacific region, which is far closer to China. So perhaps China's not interested in peace at all, but it's simply pretending for its own ulterior reasons. What do you think?
Sure. I mean, this gets into the question of, does China like to see this war go on, or do they not? So you look at what is the cost-benefit analysis for them. They definitely enjoy now having, on the one hand, Russia as a clear junior partner that they can very much control the relationship politically, economically, financially. They also like to see Europe, the West, strapped down, on the one hand, right? Strapped down in this war, diverting their time, their energy, their resources towards this war, and that'll give them a little bit more flexibility in the East. But on the other side, they're very hesitant. They're very scared, of course, to upset the relationship with the West. We talk about trade. It's over 10 times the amount that they trade with the Western world, with the EU and the US combined, than they do with Russia. And that's even after the monumental increases of trade that we've seen over the last 2.5 years, mostly in energy, of course, with Russia. So they're scared to do that. And if they wanted to support Russia more clearly, more decisively, they could have done many things. Sign a new gas deal with Russia, which Russia's begging for, and they're not doing it. And then also giving more financial support, which Russia would definitely need. Russia's going for ammunition, artillery from North Korea, not to China, at least directly. Now, it's hard to know. It seems that China's not providing aid via North Korea to military aid indirectly through North Korea to Russia. That's possible, but to date, that it's unknown. But it seems that it's not occurring. So they're not providing more support than they could be.
Right.
So the question becomes: do they want this for the long term? I would say China does not want this war for the long term. But it's been 2.5 years. They're happy to see it go on. It undermines the West, and it makes Russia an even more junior partner.
Understood. Well, as always, we'll be watching the situation very closely. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Come back soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.